Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
The best. Just the best.
Jack
King
Frost
Cole, akin the
nipping
Christmas
at
song.
your
Welcome back to The
nose.
Law Show here this final Sunday morning before Christmas 2015. I'm Sterling Fox. Rudy Kisher and Alex Stojcevic are two of the partners with Maynard Kisher Stojcevic, immigration and citizenship lawyers. And we've spent a lot of time talking about the big stories of 2015, some of the challenges facing the new government coming in 2016, some of the new rules facing us all in place, some of them, and coming soon in March in 2016. But clearly, we would be remiss in this conversation if we didn't acknowledge the big story of 2015, the refugee story, the Middle East crisis, etc. Lots of articles, lots of thoughts. There's this piece from Van City that was circulating around the province a few days ago called From Crisis to Community, Syrian Refugees and the BC Economy. Lots of people seem to think the acceptance of refugees anywhere in Canada is a benefit, not only for the communities, Rudy, but for the economy. And I'm going to you first because you're a former employee of the United Nations Commission, High Commission for Refugees. You know the story from both sides of the ocean, literally.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting article. I mean, it's definitely been forefront of the news. I don't think we've seen, probably not since the Vietnamese boat people, have we seen, refugee resettlement sort of captivate the media and captivate the Canadian public.
Absolutely.
I mean, the amount of the people from the business community that have come forward and offered money, offered assistance with residency has been overwhelming. I think it's very impressive. But in terms of the economic advantage, I think that's asking a lot out of our refugees. If I take a look at that story, that the numbers to me, when Van City talks about, first they talk about refugees and then they later talk about, when immigrants arrive, etc. These refugees arriving, a lot of them have already been screened, and part of the screening process, sometimes they have to be able to the officer has to believe that they'll be able to economically establish.
Sure, right.
And the ones that are coming in that are sponsored usually already have a network here, so they're arriving to a family there'll be a family or a group or a church or community that's going to help them integrate and help them find a job. And the evidence has shown that something like 85% of those that are sponsored by family groups and church groups usually find work within the first year.
So privately sponsored refugees tend to assimilate more quickly, or is that too crass a generalization?
No, I think that's true. I think they tend to, they get more help. I mean, the reality is that these private sponsors, it's not sort of a government bureaucrat that's, they're having to report to and sort of giving them some help. It's actually individuals that are taking them to jobs. It's a lot easier to get a job if someone's calling and saying, listen, our church group sponsored this refugee. Do you think you might be able to have a job for them? And reaching out, as opposed to reaching going to a center where they're going to say, okay, here's the job board, start knocking on doors, right?
Final thoughts on this, Alex, if you don't mind, because we're almost out of time. There may eventually be some net benefit to our economy, but in the short term, it's going to cost us a lot of money, isn't it?
Now, look, most of the research done, and including what's been used here, is mostly telling us about what immigrants do to the economy.
Yes, and they confused that in the Van City article, too.
I mean, the fact is immigrants increase population, so as a result, they increase demand for services, they increase demand for various other things that, they need households. Households require, items to develop those households, education inputs, all kinds of things go into and a large part of our economy has been driven for years and years now by population growth.
Absolutely.
The real challenge, though, is for stories like the Van City piece, the assumption that is built in is that there will be a significant investment in these people.
Yes.
And with the private context, we know what that investment is. It's a group that's dedicated some element of its own resources to getting these people settled. In a private family group, it's 5 people in that family who are doing that.
Yes.
In the government, the problem with the government-sponsored refugees, particularly in the last decade, is that there hasn't been the investment in them. There is excellent research that says that where we've invested a lot in the refugees early on in their process, by a lot of proximity to government services, a lot of integration work, we do have very good outcomes, particularly in the second generation. And many argue better than in the case of regular immigrants because of loyalty that is built in to Canada, thanks to all of this effort that has been put in, as opposed to, what other immigrants who are perhaps much more cosmopolitan, who don't need government services,
right.
who are, easily plug themselves into the Canadian economy, but then are also not as loyal to Canada as the people that we've invested
Well,
money
we're
in.
certainly about to see how this is going to shake out on a rather massive scale with 25,000 individuals expected in the country in the next 6 months. It's going to be an absolutely fascinating experiment, and I look forward to the input that you two are going to provide us as we go forward with all of this and watch from whatever distance we choose. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. Rudy and Alex, Merry Christmas, both of you.
Merry Christmas
Christmas
to you, Sterling.
Thanks
and
for
all your
coming in.
listeners.
And all the best for the year.
And our best to Gordon Maynard as well. Rudy Kisher and Alex Stoicevich. The firm is Maynard Kisher Stoicevich. Any immigration and citizenship issues, check them out online at vancouverlaw.ca. All of the contact points, everything you need to get in touch with the firm at vancouverlaw.ca. That's it for this show. See you next time.